Yeah, okay, let's do this. So we're up to Perek Mem Dalid, Pasuk Hey. And to remind you, because this continues, Pasuk Hey continues a theme in Pasuk Dalid. Pasuk Dalid says he's going to accuse the brothers with repaying good with evil. Lo mashalamtem ra'a tachas toiva. And now his argument continues. What? That was the last week's share, which we're going to continue. That there's an irony over here, which is that he's accusing them of repaying good with evil. And if you look at the story, you want to say who actually initiated the Ra. First one engaging in Ra is Yosef. Yosef has Dibas Ra, and that got everything started. And that irony is picked up on or brought into sharp relief by Yirmiyah, who complains about his townspeople that want to throw him in a pit and repay good with evil, when he was the one who said good to Hashem, always spoke good about them. So that's showing us to see the irony of it. Right. Yosef was thrown into a pit using maybe deeper ra, and now he turns around and says, So as we discussed last week, and this we're going to explore further this week, the themes of Tov V'Ra are central in the Yosef story. Why? Because the Yosef story begins with Yosef's Dibas Ra, ends with Yosef. The punchline of the Yosef story is, you meant it as evil. Alakim chashava l'tayra. So Yosef's shtikol Torah is about Tov V'Ra. Tov V'Ra is not what we think it is. Atem chashavtem olay ra'a, alakim chashava l'tayra. What we think is evil could be good. What we think is good could be evil. And this is happening right in this pasuk. Oh, how's that from the Yosef's philosophy? Is what we're going to talk about tonight.
We're disconnected, right?
That's how. That's the answer. You see how? In other words, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. The question was, how's it from the Yosef's philosophy? The answer is, Yosef's philosophy, as opposed to the brothers, is that we don't know everything that's going on. The brothers' philosophy is we're supposed to be Nevi, we're supposed to have Das Hashem. So when there's Toiv, we are going to recognize it as such. And when there's Ra, we're going to recognize it as such. And Yosef's Chiddush is, no. There are things happening that we cannot fathom, we can only dream about, we can only do nichush about. That's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. That's when nichush comes in, because nichush is associated with dreaming. It's basically if you don't have clarity, if God is far away, so how do you read God's mind? In other words, how do you know what's good or evil? You can't identify it with your das, because we don't have full knowledge, full clarity. That's Yosef's philosophy. In that philosophy, what seems to be good can really be evil, what seems to be evil can really be good. The usual metrics of good and evil no longer work. What we need, see, here's the thing, I think the philosophy is that in order to determine something is good and evil, we have to wait and see what the result is, right? That's the Yosef story. It's that you meant to do evil, but it was really good. It looked like evil. He's like, well, what do we know? Okay, so then how could you determine good and evil? You wait and see what happens. To sell your brother could be good, because it turned into a good thing. Okay? And to speak negatively against your brothers could be good, because it turned into a good thing. So that precipitated the whole story. Everything worked out well.
That is removing the intention from...
That's the whole point, exactly. We have our intention. Our intention is not determinative because we are not knowledgeable enough to know, to discern good from evil.
But ultimately, we're responsible for our intention.
I don't know. Yosef, he stays no. I don't know what Yosef holds about it. Yosef says that we don't know nothing. God will lead us around by the nose through dreams and through divinations and all sorts of things that just tell us what to do. It's sort of like a lack of bechira a little bit. It's like we're not active God is. Right? That's his whole point. Lo yatem shlachtem oisihenu ki hu Elokim, he says. You didn't do it, God did.
Right.
What do you mean? The Rambam quotes that pasuk in Beis Mem Ches, in the last parak in the second chiluk in the Moed, a parak which he says you should pay more attention to than any parak in the whole Sefer. And that parak he has to say that everything that happens in the world is considered that God did it, even if something happened through free will.
Yeah.
Okay, and he has this weird sentence there that says God necessitated the free will, which seems to be an oxymoron. The new translation says that's an incorrect translation, and maybe he's right. And it's not really a contradiction. But basically, Ram does say that everything that happens, including what people do, is considered that God did it. And this is one of the psukim he brings. Lo atem shlachtem oisiheinu
Yeah,
ki
but ultimately
Elokim.
you still have the Chira, you're still responsible for your choice.
I don't know. I'm not so sure. Yosef says, you didn't do it, God did it. So, look, let's put it this way, without getting into the question that you're raising about free choice, Yosef clearly minimizes the role of humans and maximizes the role of God. By saying God is in heaven, we're on earth, what?
Let's not see the Shir.
Yeah, let's see. No, but that's the philosophy, right. But then you see how that's tied. So, in other words, the fact that Yosef is playing games with what we consider to be good and evil ties in very well with Yosef's philosophy,
Right.
which is that we don't have das, Hashem. Okay?
Yeah.
Fine. Next pasuk. Haloiza, and I want you to notice, okay, so that's what I want to bring up. That pasuk Dal is focusing on the fact that it's good instead of evil. And notice that in pasuk A, it's also repeated this business of that it's evil, at the end of the pasuk. But first he says, Haloiza asher yishta adoni boy. This is what my master drinks from. V'hu nachesh yinachesh boy. And he uses this for nichosh, some sort of divination of the future. Therefore, hare oisem asher asisem. So again, he repeats this charge of the fact that it's raw. So the fact that it's raw is repeated twice, which tells us that that's something we should pay special attention to. Now, just notice in pasuk hey, he doesn't say what. He just says haloizeh, because he's acting as if they know. Right? The whole point is that it's ki'ilu, they know exactly what he's talking about, so he doesn't have to be marketed. They don't know what he's talking about, which is illustrated in pasuk Ches, where they say, so we wouldn't steal silver or gold, it was really silver. They didn't know. No one identified it. He just said halazeh. So they just knew he's talking about something. Okay. Now, just I learned something new today, which is that what is the nichosh? How does a person menachesh with a gavia? How do you use a gavia for fortune telling or telling the future? Okay.
One way is tea.
What?
One way is to
Drop something in.
make tea and
Yeah.
then pour out the water and see what the on the bottom.
So right,
That's one
okay.
way I know.
But I don't know if that's with the gavia. I mean, yeah. Right. So I saw something called scrying. S-K-R-Y.
Yeah, you look at
Right.
you have a
Reflection.
reflection.
So you fill it up.
Yeah,
Right. So you fill up the gavia,
still, and you look
and
at
then
it.
you look,
Yeah.
and somehow you'll see something. And apparently this was that popular in Egypt. So I don't know. Okay. So let's assume it's that. There actually is I'll see. As I said, I didn't have that much. I had some limitations on my time today, but there is a pasuk in Mishlei that actually might be describing this, even though I didn't see any of the Farshim say that, and it relates to our parsha. But that would be the nichosh, according to my external studies, not from Tanakh. Maybe it's a pasuk Tanakh also. The nichosh done with the gavia is this thing called scrying. You look, you fill up the gavia. Gavia is like no, it's a wine. It's a wine holder, which because it says yishteba, he drinks with it. But it's apparently it's not. It's like a big wine holder. You pour from there into a kais. It's a pasuk in, I think in Yishai. Okay, fine. Now, now there's something interesting over here because what's the pshat in this pasuk? He's saying, isn't this what he uses for drinking and for his divination? Therefore, you've done evil. Why does it follow that they've done evil from the fact that he drinks and divines with this? I mean, the fact that they stole something that they weren't entitled to is the evil. How do I understand this pasuk? He's like, Allah is that. This is what he drinks with. This is what he does nichosh with. Therefore, you did evil. You did evil because you took something that doesn't belong to you. So, but as I noticed earlier, as I pointed out, there's a stress over here on the fact that they did evil. That's his ikar charge.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to show is, and 1 second, and it's actually not so obvious that they did evil because arguably Yosef is the one who initiated the evil, and they're doing what's right. He's the one who did Dibara, and the truth is, even in this story also, he's the evildoer because he's plotting against them. But he's manipulating the situation. So this guy's coming and saying a big chiddush. He's saying, you're the evildoers. And he's connecting the fact that they're the evildoers with the fact that he drinks from this and does nichosh, okay? So now we have a theme over here that perhaps this major question of, can a person identify evil? Can a person point to something which doesn't look, can a person point to something which doesn't look like evil based on any moral considerations, the present, ethical considerations, and say that's evil? That has something to do with drinking, and that has something to do with nichosh. That's how I want to read the pasuk, and so I'll show you some other sources in Tanakh that bear that out.
I mean, but if you look at the end of pasuk Dalet, right? But Amar Aleim, say to them,
Right.
So this guy basically is a pop.
Yes.
His Roisa in the next pasuk, when he tells them, you took my master's cup
Right.
and he did this bad thing, it's because he literally was told to say that
These are the words to say. These are the words to say. No, but this is all part of the message. You see?
Yeah.
Pasuk Dal and Hay is here. Tell them, quote, right. And then he went and told them that. Right? So in the message, he's telling them a chiddush that they're the evildoers, which is not at all obvious, right? Okay. Okay, so again, as we just said before, as you preempted me, I was going to say now that this has to do with Yosef's philosophy, which is that the toiv, because what does it mean to know Hashem? It means that you are a man, basically, in a nutshell. It means you know what's good and what's evil. You know what's right and what's wrong. So if Yosef says we don't have full knowledge of Hashem, Hashem is in heaven, we are on earth, he's far away, so we don't know what's good and evil. And sometimes what looks like evil is actually good, and the reverse. So that's his big chiddush over here. And what I'm going to show you is we're going to read a bunch of psukim that reference this whole story. And through putting together some of these psukim, we're going to see that there's a connection to drinking and to nichosh, right? So nichosh, I already said what the connection is. The connection is that nichosh is related to dreams. Because nichosh is a way of finding out what God has in store for you, which is not what the Nevi'im do. The Nevi'im understand Hashem, and Mamela they know the future. They have das. Nichosh is not to understand. Nichosh is, even though I don't, which is exactly something the dream is, as I discussed at the beginning of Miketz. The fact that Yosef has a dream is very important, because a dream is not the same thing as a Navi. A Navi, once he has his Nevuah, he reaches a level of understanding of how to live in the environment of the universe, of Hashem's world. He understands better how to live. A dreamer is someone who's motivated to do something to deal with an unknown future. The dream doesn't make it that you're familiar with the future. The dream is, even though you're not familiar with it, afal pikein, you're going to know what to do. Afal pikein, you're going to be inspired to somehow do something. Like in the Yosef story where he told Paro, you have to prepare for the hunger. And that's why it's significant that it actually didn't come true exactly as Yosef said. There was only 2 years of hunger, because it's a dream, it's not a nevuah. And dreams are suspect. Okay? So that's Yosef's philosophy. Yosef's philosophy is human beings cannot be together with Hashem. Hashem and humans are on different planes. It means humans cannot identify the Tov and the Ra. Instead, they need a way of finding out the future, because they're not good judges of Tov and Ra. So how are they supposed to know what to do? They have to find out the outcome. So therefore, nichosh fits into this very well. We're going to show that a couple of things. We're going to show that drinking has to do with this too. And furthermore, I think we see a little more about nichosh, maybe yes. But we're also going to show that the nachash, nichosh and nachash, which are associated, that there's a nachash theme going on in Tanakh about this story. Snake, which is no surprise given that the question of Tov v'Ra takes us back to the nachash, right? So in other words, this is a very big question for humanity. Can humanity determine what's Tov and Ra? It's a very, very important question. And this is Bat's and Machlekes Yisrael and brothers. And this, somehow or another, figure it out how, brings us back to the question of Bereshis, of can we know the Tov? Are we good judges of the Tov, V'isim Kilikim, or not? Can we be like God or not? But it seems like the brothers hold we can be like God, yes, holds we cannot. And this has something to do with the Nachash. And we'll see in Tanakh, I'm going to go through a bunch of parashas with that. On our parasha, we'll see that the Nachash comes up a lot. So I'm going to go through a bunch of psukim. First, let's look at the parak in Keheles. This is Keheles parak Yud, which you'll remember from prior weeks, that we kept on getting back to. Keheles parak Yud. We'll start from pasuk Yud Daled. Keheles 10:14, where it says a person doesn't know what's going to happen. Lo yeda ha'adam ma sheyeh. A person does not know what's going to be. And the next pasuk talks about the fool. That's lo yoda laleches el ir. Okay, and this is Yosef's big shita that we lack das. And in our story in the end of Miketz, Yosef tells them, "Halo yadatem." You should have known something that you didn't know, and they got lost, as we discussed last week. They left the city and they came back to the city. So they prove to be the fools who don't know where they're going. They think they're going back to Eretz Canaan, but meanwhile they don't know because they lack das. And that's Yosef's big teaching, that lo yeda ha'adam ma sheyeh. We cannot know the future. Again, let me be very clear. Yosef is the one who finds out the future, but that's not called Yeda. That's called, as I said before, that's called, even though we don't know the future, we're going to find a way to live according to, in some sort of vague sense of the future. That's not the same thing as clarity with the Das Hashem. And then the next pasuk, Jeremiah, talks about when we eat, and the king is not supposed to be a nar. Yosef started off as a nar. You shouldn't eat in the morning, rather you should eat in the later than the morning. Yosef ate with the brothers Batzaharayim. Okay, now jumping to pasuk Yutes, which talks about lechem, yayin, and kesef. Okay, Yosef takes care of the lechem, and there's the yayin thing in our story, and of course kesef. The next pasuk talks about not cursing Hashem, the king. I'm sorry, in your mind, because the bird will carry the news around. The bird, according to the Medrash, means augury. Augury is using birds for, I think it's called augury. It's a kind of divination using ravens. Okay, fine. Next pasuk talks about shlach lachem mo apnei hamayim. So save your bread for another day. This is exactly what Yosef did. Tein chelik l'shiva v'gam l'shemayna. The 7 years of plenty, but we have to plan for the 8th year, which is going to be a hunger. Ki lo yiseda ma yeru al haaretz. Because, like I said, because Yosef's sheet is we don't know, and therefore we have to have dreams that help us know what to do, and what we know, and the dreams will tell us to plan ahead for the 8th year. Exactly what Yosef did. Okay, and then pasuk again talks about how lo yisedas ma'aseh ha'alekim asher ya'aseh sakol. You don't know. You don't know. Next pasuk again talks about try a little of this, a little bit. You have to diversify because ein chayodea. Ein chayodea. By the way, see, what was Yosef's big kunz? I spoke about the beginning of Miketz. What was Yosef's big kunz? Saving for 7 years of Rav. What's the guy's kunz? It's an insurance policy. That's the big kunz. Yosef was mechadish that we have to act towards the future. We have to recognize that we don't know, and therefore we have to start planning for the unknown. This is Yosef's big chiddush. We're making an insurance policy in Egypt. Everyone else is like, what do you mean? We know everything. Right now it's raining outside. What do you mean tomorrow might not rain? Which never occurred to them to think that way. Yosef says, no, we have to understand that we cannot only think about what we know. In fact, there's a big gap in human knowledge, and we should focus on that. What?
Scenario planning. Scenario
planning, but it's a sophisticated way of thinking, and it's a humble way of thinking. It's recognizing that we lack das. And I maintain that before Yosef, everyone was like, no, whatever we know, and there's no world beyond that. There's no unknown. There's no such thing as the unknown. It's just nothing. And they're just like, no, we have to actually think about the unknown. Oh, so what do you do when you start thinking about unknown? First you do insurance policy. You also have dreams because you're like halfway in this unknown world, right? Okay. Next pasuk. The light is sweet and it's good for the eyes to see the sun. So this pasuk is interesting to me. And the next pasuk talks about to watch out for the days of choshech. See? Pasuk Zayin and Ches. The light is sweet and it's good for the eyes to see the sun, and make sure to avoid the days of darkness. So this pasuk was interesting to me because we have in our parish haboker or. We spoke about this last week. Boker is or. When morning came light, that's when they were sent out. Okay, and here it talks about the fact that light is sweet and it's good. So I think, and then the next pasuk is about days of darkness. So I think the pshat is like this. What's the pasuk saying when they're saying the morning was light? The pshat in the pasuk saying when it becomes light outside, that's when it's safe to travel, and that's what the Medrash carries on over here in Miketz about the Ur is called Toiv. The Parshas Bereshis. Ve'alakim asar ki Toiv, and you should only travel when there's Toiv. That's in Gemara Pesachim. La'olam yetzi adam b'chi Toiv yikaz b'Toiv. You should only travel when there's Toiv. And this, so now, pasuk says over here in Miketz habayker Ur. Now you could travel. Why? Because the Ur is the right thing you need to travel. The Ur is Toiv, like it says in Bereshis. Ve'alakim asar ki Toiv. And this pasuk in Kehalos also says, yeah, the Ur is sweet and it's Toiv. Okay, but watch out from the days of choshech. The next pasuk. So the pshat is like this. Yosef is flipping around toiv and ra for toiv, or for choshech, and choshech for or. He's saying everything you think about, what the clarity that you think is toiv is actually not necessarily the case. So haboker or, you think that's toiv, and Yosef is plunging them back into darkness because he's telling them what you think is Toiv may be right. What you think is Ra is actually Toiv. And this that Yosef brings them back to darkness. So we're done with Kehelas. This that Yosef brings them back into darkness. This takes us back to Be'etzim Yosef's dream. But look in Micha, Paragimel. Yosef had a dream that the sun and the moon and the stars were all bowing. Now the luminaries bowing means setting. Is that the Gemara says the sun sets in the west to the Shechina, bows to the Shechina. So if Yosef dreamt that the sun and the moon and the stars are all bowing, that means all the luminaries were setting, and the world was being plunged into darkness. That's the meaning of Yosef's dream spoken of in Yosef. Yosef had a dream about darkness, which is very appropriate. Why? Because Yosef is the one who's telling the brothers that we're not doing nevuah anymore, we're not doing re'iyah anymore, now we're doing darkness. Okay? And this is what its marum is in Sefer Micha. If you have Micha Perek Gimel, it says, Shimuna Roshei Beis Yaakov. And the Medrash says, Yosef said to his brothers, Shimuna, he said to his brothers, Shimuna, this dream that I had. And here Micha says Shimuna, and the Medrash connects it. It says Yosef was telling the brothers, this is the lashon that the Nevi'im are going to use for you. And if you look at this parak, we're not going to look at it again, but there are numerous references to the dream of Yosef and the Yosef story in general. And the one that's negated to us over here is, if you look at pasuk Vav, it says the Nevi'im that are not qualified, it's going to become dark for them. Laila lachem mechazoin. And God is not going to speak to you. So the Shimuna, the message of Yaakov to the brothers, of Yosef to the brothers, Shimuna, is that you are losing your nevuah, you are going to be plunged into darkness. Okay? So as we discussed this, and one meaning of the fact that they ate Batzaharayim was that now they were getting clarity again. And here again we have something about the light, Habaykar, but Yosef is going to quickly flip that around, and everything seems great, everything's looking up for them, everything's looking shiny and rosy, Habaykar, and Yosef quickly tells them, no, you guys don't know what's Taiv, you don't know what's Ra, I'm bringing you right back into the darkness that I predicted, and when I dreamt Shemuna and said, the sun, the moon, the stars are all setting, you're becoming plunged into darkness. And so you see, that's so the light and dark, which is synonymous in Tov and Ra, because Vayar Lakim is Ar Ki Tov, that is the essence of Tov is the Ar. So when Yosef is playing around with Ra Tachas Tova, he's also playing around with the Ar instead of Choshech, like the pasuk says in Kehelas, in the same context, since we don't know the future, so the Ar is sweet and it's Tov, but watch out for the Yemei HaChoshech. You never know when it actually will turn into Yemei HaChoshech. That's what Yosef is doing. Okay, that's one thing. Now, look, turn from Micha to Amais. Go backwards for that. Let's start with Pasuk Perik Hey in Amais, and I'm going to show you a bunch of psukim, which again we won't go back into all the psukim there, but in Perik Hey it talks about Kitzur in Perik Hey there's references to Yosef. I won't repeat them. To the Yosef story, and in Pasuk Ches, Paragei Pasuk Ches, it talks about Hashem makes the Yom dark like Laila, okay, and he floods the earth, and these people, the message to them in Pasuk Yudalet is Dirshu Toiv Va'al Ra, make sure to get the Toiv and not the Ra, and in Pasuk Tezvav Sinu Ra Ve'ehavu Toiv, you have to make sure to hate the Ra and love the Toiv. Maybe then Yachanan Hashem. Maybe then Hashem is going to have pity on Yosef. And now jump out of Pasuk Yud Ches. There's people that look forward to the Yom Hashem. Are you looking forward to the Yom Hashem, the day when Hashem is going to reveal himself? You think it's light, but for you bad guys, the Yom Hashem is dark. So here we have this thing about seeking the Tov and not the Ra, and make sure that the Yom is Or not Choshech. And the next passage talks about a mashal, a person runs away from a lion, bumps into a bear, he comes home and the snake bites him. So this is the first Ramaz. I'm going to show you a bunch of Ramazim to the Nachash as a Nichosh, right? And there it says again, "Alay choshech yam Hashem v'lo or v'lo afal." So habayker or everything looks great, but really it's choshech. Why? Because if you don't know the difference between Ra and Toiv, then how could you? Then you don't know what's good and what's bad for you, and that's what the Nichosh indicates, and that's what the Navi adds with a curse of a Nachash. Again, like we said, the Nachash takes us back to Horatius, the Nachash who manipulates the Toiv and Ra. Okay, same thing we have, or similar Ramazan we have in Yeshaya, Perek Chof Tes. Okay, let's see what happened in Yeshaya Perek Chof Tes. Actually, I meant to say Perek Chof Zayin. Okay, but in order to understand this, I want to be makdim something else. Okay, let's be makdim something in Miketz. In Miketz, when Yosef meets the brothers, he tells them, "What have you done? Don't you know halo yadatem ki nachesh yinachesh ish asher kamoini?" Okay, that's Yosef says to them. Let's look at that. That's in Miketz when he meets them when they come back to the city. Perek Mem Daled Pasuk Tesvav. Vayomer Lam Yosef Ma Ma'azeh Asher Asisim Halo Yadatem Ki Nachesh Yinachesh Ish Asher Kamoini. So what's he saying? What does he mean? Don't you know that a person like me does nichosh? Yeah, so what? So the Mepharshim say, and I think it's Pashut Pshat, what were you thinking? You thought you'd get away with this? Don't you know that someone like me, I have my ways of finding things out? Now there's some major irony over here, because how does he do nichosh? The Geviyah. Take his Geviyah, you're okay. But you see what he says? He says, don't you know that Ish Asher Kamoini does nichosh? So he's saying, you think it comes from my Geviyah? I have my powers of nichosh. That's what he's saying, okay? Now, notice that he says, Ish Asher Kamoini, someone like me, and Vayigash Elav Yehuda and says, Ki Chamoicha Kifar. Okay, now, what's the grace of Yichus of Yosef? What do you mean Ish Asher Kamoini? Who are you already? What's so special about you? At the beginning of Parashas Miketz, Paris said, if Hashem told you all this, Ein Navan v'chacham kamoicha. Ein Navan v'chacham kamoicha. So what does it mean, Ish Asher Kamoini? Kamoini, what?
Philosophy.
What do you mean?
Yeah. System that we're disconnected.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, but I'm pointing out that the fact that he's saying there's a person Kamoini is because you know what Pari said about me? That there's nobody Kamoini. I mean, that's the like me. Who are Vebes to? Oh, Pari already was made on your godless, right? But now Yehuda says, so what's your guys' yichus? That Pari was the one who made you a Kamoicha. Kamoicha Kefare. So meaning your whole yichus is that you're like that you're quoting Pari about you, so then you're like Pari. Okay. So now look in Yeshaya, Perek of Tes.
But it's also, I think,
Perek of Zayin, sorry.
To the fact that he won't do nichosh at all. That he's a dreamer.
But I'm not sure Novin B'chacham, right? That what? But I don't think Novin B'chacham means dafka that. That's why I don't agree. I think Nevi'im are also called. Oh, you mean that he's thinking things out?
That he's doing it his way. He's not going the Das Hashem route.
Oh, Kamoini.
He's going the dreaming route.
Kamoini.
That's the thing that's unique about Yosef.
Right.
He's a dreamer, right?
Right, exactly. Right, very good. Which also fits into the fact. And then they say Kamoicha Kefari. In other words, he's aligning himself with the non-Jewish way. Yes, for sure. Right, very true. Now, there's something interesting here which I pointed out in the past. That who said about Yosef that he's so smart? Pari. And notice what Pari said. Pari said, Ein Navoin v'chacham kamecha. So the Nevi'im, and this is the kind of thing that after you find it, and you learn a little bit of the way we learn here, you realize it becomes very predictable. If the way Pari, who's really we don't respect his opinion, he's the one who said about Yosef, Ein Navoin v'chacham kamecha, so then the move is right there for us to start calling Yosef Nishkan Navoin. Because we could say, oh, he's not a Navin. See? Because Pari is the one who said, Ein Navin v'chacham kamecha. So that really indicates that you're actually not a Navin. And you're not a Chacham. And both of these expressions of him not being a Navin, not being a Chacham, we find in the Nevi'im, one in Yeshaya, one in Yeshaya, and the context of Yosef. Okay, and that brings us to Perek of Zayin in Yeshaya. Again, and also a Perek that we've been reaching for time and time again since the beginning of Parshas Miketz, and maybe even before. So Perek of Zayin begins that Hashem is going to visit with his great sword the Nachash. and twice the pasuk talks about the nachash, and that's referring to Parai. Parai is the nachash, or the tanin, and the tanin, because the nachash could live in the sea as well. So Parai is the nachash. Okay. And further there it says, we're not going to go into all the references again, but in pasuk Yud Aleph it says that Am Yisrael is Eloi Am Binaisu. It's not a nation of Bina, and this is the playing around with Yosef being called Ein Navain. So here, where the Navi's decrying the fact that Bnei Yisrael is going down to Mitzrayim and trusts Mitzrayim for help, like Yosef did. In fact, no, Mitzrayim will not be of aid to them. Hashem is going to kill the snake, which is Mitzrayim, and you, Bnei Yisrael, are lacking a Bina. Loi Am Binais. You're not an Am Binais. Right. Exactly. Very, very relevant. Now, jump ahead. You see, like, take a look, for example, in Perek Lamed. We'll jump ahead to Perek Lamed. All these, again, I'm not going to go back to all these psukim, but if you remember, we've been referencing them again and again. So the references to Yosef are very clear. Here's one of them. Bonim Seirim, Perek Lamed Pasuk Aleph. Sons who are Seirim and are doing an eitzah not from Hashem. What's the eitzah that they're doing that's not from Hashem? Pasuk Beis, Hahochim Loredes Mitzrayim Ufi Loisha Alu. You're taking refuge in the might of Parai, the foreign powers, and the pasuk says specifically, you're going down to Mitzrayim without asking Hashem, and that brings us back to our story where everyone knows we have to go down to Mitzrayim, but instead of it happening by Hashem telling Yaakov it's time to go, instead Yosef precipitates that everyone ends up going down to Mitzrayim in a matzav of Hester when Hashem is not speaking to them, and that's very problematic. Okay, what should have happened? And this again brings us back to me of Miketz. What should have happened? Even when Yosef was facing the Rav, so he supports Parai, right? He says, Halakim Ya'ana Shalom Parai. What could he have done? He could have said there's going to be a Rav, and too bad, that's what Hashem wants, we'll survive on a small amount of bread. This is Pasuk Yutes in that same Perek Lamed, Pasuk Yutes. It says the people could live in Sion and have a small amount of food, of bread and mayim lachatz, and you're better off that way. Kids, don't go to Parai and say we need a lot of lechem and mayim. Stay in Sion, have lechem tzar, mayim lachatz, and everything is going to be great. And then you're going to hear, pasuk Kaval, if you're going to hear a voice saying, go on this path, you're going to know what to do, basically. You're going to defile your idols and your afudas. So in other words, you rely on an ephod is a form that's an ephod is something that was used to tell the future. And you're going to know which way to go. You're going to know how to act if you just be with Hashem, and therefore you're going to be able to throw out your masecha and your psilim. And as the pasuk says, you're going to treat it like a nida. This pasuk tells us that avodah zarah is matame ke nida, which brings us back to Rachel hiding the trufim and saying, "I'm a nida, I can't get up." Okay, which the parallel to the Yosef story that Rachel stole the trufim and Yosef has his gevia. So that's where this ties in. That you see the pasuk says the kesef and the zahav, and they said we wouldn't steal kesef and zahav. If you stay with Hashem, then you wouldn't need the divination of the ephod that can tell you what to do, and instead you're rejected. And Hashem is going to make it rain for you. That happens in Eretz Yisrael, right? Instead of Mitzrayim, where they don't need rain, you could just rely on Hashem, and the rain will come. And fine, very good. And then it ends Pesach Chavav V'hoya Or Halavana K'Or Hachama. The light will be amazing. When Yom Chavosh Hashem Hashem Amar, when Hashem heals His nation. This brings us back to Mizmor Kuf Mem Zayin. We spoke about this pasuk once. That's about Yosef. So that's when the light will shine. So you see, there's the theme in the whole Yosef story about light. It starts of Shemuna, the sun is setting, we're getting plunged into darkness, and I'm bringing you down with me into darkness. And don't think you're going to be Nevi'im. You're also going to lose your Nevuah. And then we have the Tzaharayim and the Boker Or, all these possibilities of illumination again. But in order to be illuminated, you have to know the difference between Taiv and Ra. Yosef is bringing them back down again. We're not ready yet for the rapprochement when the light actually truly returns. Okay? Those are those psukim. That's what I want to bring out from those psukim. Okay, the other place where we talk about the Bein Lechacham, you don't have to look this up. I'll just tell you Bekitzer. quickly because I want to get on to the next remez. In the end of Hosea, Perik Yud Gimel Pasuk Yud Gimel, it talks about Bein Loi Chacham, the son who's not a Chacham. That's also a reference to Yosef, who was Ein Novin Chacham. And there in Pasuk Beis, in that same parak, it talks about the Masecha that's made out of Kesef, and they look to them. So similarly to Yeshaya, where there's this idol, and the Bein Loi Chacham or the Aloi Ambinos looks towards the Masecha, and really they should reject it and defile it, and be with Hashem. Fine. Okay, now 2 more Mekayos we have. This one is very interesting. Look at Mishlei Perek Chav Gimel. Mishlei Perek Chav Gimel Pasuk Chav Tes. Here we have 7 psukim about the dangers of getting drunk. Lemi oy, lemi avoy, who suffers? Lama'achim alayayin, those that stay late drinking wine. So, remember this wine party we had, where they were same place in the morning, a real good party, and they got drunk. Okay, al tera yayin kiyas adam. Don't look at wine when it becomes red. Ki yitain bakois einoi, when he put his eyes in the cup. So here's where I say this pasuk, my pshad, is crying, right? Looking at the cup, right? Yishalach b'meisharim, and you think that's going to tell you how to go. Yeah, and achrisai kenacha shicha. See, there's my snake again. Actually, it's going to bite you like a snake. Okay, so here's we have a nichosh, and we have wine, and we have looking at the cup. So that's why I suspect that that this pasuk is a remez. Right, it is. Einecha yeruzaros, your eyes that are looking to the cup to see what to do are actually going to see, phantasms, because when you're drunk. V'libcha yedaber tapuchais. You're going to be medaber tapuchais. If you remember from last week, we spoke about the pasuk in Perek Gimel and Mishlei, which talks about if you seek it like matmoinim ufram yiras Hashem, and that will save you from the person who speaks tapuchais. Who speaks tapuchais? Yosef, who labels rat toiv, and toiv rat, that's tapuchais. So here also, if you get into the wine makes a person be medaber tapuchais, right? Because we get drunk, and you don't know what we're talking about. So that's my second remez over here. He's saying to him like this: he drinks with this, and he's menakash with it, and those both drinking and nichosh put us in a different realm of toiv and ra. And now I'm going to do tapuchis and say lama shalam temrat tachas teiva. Number 1, because I'm drunk people do that, and number 2, because I have a whole different world of toiv and ra, which is based on nichosh, and you wouldn't know it, and I would. Okay, now look at the next pasuk, Perek of Dal pasuk Av. I think it's more remazim. Al tekane b'anshe ra. Who is mekane and whom? The brothers were mekane Yosef, but he's an ishra. Why are you mekane in him? You guys do your thing. Don't worry about you. Let Yosef do his shtick, but you shouldn't be mekane him. You're a different world. Okay, you should look for chachma. Okay, then it talks about chachma, tuna, and das. Interesting, because Yosef, fine, seder. And I think there's one more pasuk over here. Yeah, okay, that's all. Fine. Okay. Right, I meant to say before, a pasuk we referenced last week, by the way, we're talking about Amos. I meant to reference this pasuk before. The pasuk in Amos talks about, let's look at Amos, because there was another snake. Remember, I showed you one pasuk we saw one pasuk about the snake in Amos, right? About you go, a lion, bear, snake. There's another place in Amos where it talks about the snake, and that's the pasuk we actually mentioned last week. That's in Perek Tes, pasuk Dalid, pasuk Gimel, and it says no matter where people hide, Hashem is going to, wherever they hide, Hashem is going to command the snake to bite them. Perek Tes, pasuk Gimel, and pasuk Dalid says V'samti eini aleim l'ro'av v'lo l'tayva. V'samti eini aleim l'ro'av v'lo l'tayva. Again, Perek Ches in Amos talks about the sun setting in Batzaharayim. So Yosef ate with the brothers B'tzarayim, but then the sun set, they were plunged back into darkness. They lost their nevuah. Perek Tes says the snake is going to come bite them, and Hashem will be some eina aleim l'ro'av v'lo l'tayva. So this supports that, my idea that, number 1, snake has something to do with seeing toiv and ra back to Bereshis, and Yosef is the one who's playing around with toiv and ra, and that's associated with his nichosh, which is also associated with the nachash. Like we have here in Mishlei, that drinking wine and looking at the kais is going to bite you like a nachash, and you're going to see tapuches and zaris. Tapuches is that you speak ra and toiv. Okay.
I think they're related.
Yeah, how
You
so?
have to be drunk to scribe.
So I don't know.
F.
Oh, so I looked into this.
Seems very
Oh,
obvious, you know, how do
no. So according to my sources, there's no such connection. For Kert, when you scry, you have to be very miyoshiv. So they weren't drunk. I would have thought that it would have been great, right? Because
right.
no, because you want to see
Different,
visions. Yeah, if you want to see visions, so I'd rather get a little high and
Right,
see what
look at the
happens.
cup.
Yeah, but I look at the cup, right? It seems the most natural thing, right? But it's at least what I researched, there was it didn't say that, but that doesn't mean it's incorrect. And also that's a meaning source in Tanakh. But yeah, it could be that the drinking and the divining go together. I would have thought so. Okay, and now we will end with Yirmiyah Hanavi. Okay, the one we started with. Yirmiyah in Perek Yud Ches says, as we mentioned, that they're repaying good with evil because I spoke good about them to Hashem and they threw me into a pit. So this is the Yosef story, but in reverse. Because Yosef spoke evil against them, they threw him into a pit, and then he says the same thing, they're paying Ra instead of Torah, right? Now, in Yirmiyah Perek Chav Tes is a very important pasuk that bears on the Yosef story. It's Perek Chav Tes pasuk Yud Aleph. We spoke about this pasuk in the past. In Perek Chav Tes pasuk Yud Aleph, the Navi tells them you're going to be in Galus Bava for 70 years. Ki anochi yodati es hamachshavas asher anochi choshev aleichem lo Hashem machshav v'sham v'lo l'ro lo machshav tikfor. I know, says Hashem, that I'm thinking good about you. And as we discussed, we won't go repeat this, but as we discussed then, there's two kinds of things. There's two kinds of relationships with Hashem. One is a relationship called Davar, where Hashem speaks to the Nevi'im. And that's called, and when you have the relationship of Davar, there's a clarity to Hashem's actions. And that's what the Nevi'im present. When Yirmiyah says, for 70 years you're going to be in Galus, so he's telling them that now there's no Davar. Hashem is hiding. But you should know that even though Hashem is hiding, Hashem is thinking good. There's Hashem speaking Toiv, and there's Hashem thinking Toiv. Thinking Toiv is when we have to wait till the end to figure it out. So he's saying in 70 years of Redeemer, you'll look back, and you'll remember the dreamers. So Yosef has dreams, and Yosef is also saying, Elakim chashava l'toiva, means the deep machshava, that even though the way it seemed, it didn't make it, no one would have explained it as being a good thing, so it lacked dibur, because no one could say this is good and why, but nonetheless, apparently deep down, there was a deep plan of Toiv, and that's called machshavas Toivus of Hashem. Okay? Now going back to, what was Yirmiyah's time? Right, so in Yud Ches he says they tried to kill me, but I want to show you another place where Yirmiyah complains about the people trying to kill him, and that's in Perek Yud Aleph. Problem is I could not find the pasuk. Yes, pasuk Perek Yud Aleph, pasuk Yud Tes. Here's what the pasuk says: Yirmiyah was like a sheep being led to slaughter. So they were being choshev machshavos on Yirmiyah, saying, "Let's poison him, let's kill him." So they were choshev machshavos, right? And in the world of choshev machshavos, Ra and Toiv are not what they look like, because that's the whole point. The whole point of Hester is, the whole point of machshava is a way of, when it's applied to Hashem, is a way of saying that we can't identify this as being a good thing. We can't understand what Hashem is doing. That means we don't know what to do. You understand? That's the whole difference. The difference between the Nevi'im and the machshava is like this. The Nevi'im say, we know what's good, we know what's bad, and therefore we know exactly how to act. But Yirmiyah says, look, in my experience, Gufa, it leads me to this recognition, or somehow associated, I'm not sure exactly how, that even at the time that Hashem is not speaking to us for the 70 years, still Hashem is having the machshavos of Toiv. And the fact of machshavos of Toiv is that's where Yosef comes in and says what appears to be evil is really good, or what appears to be evil is really bad, Ra, what appears to be Toiv is really Ra, because I am operating in the world of machshava. Hashem doesn't speak. Nonetheless, we can figure out what Hashem is thinking because we know the future, right? If you know the future, that means Hashem is thinking good. Hashem is not speaking good. Okay, we end with the word good.